As soon as conflict breaks out in a place like Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it, Russia, the Ukraine, then everybody on YouTube is automatically a political expert.
Yes, sirree.
I'm not freaking blind, guys. It's Squalo style.
I think it's Thursday.
You could die.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch.
Geez, you know, oh yeah, because it goes on and on and on. For all you haters, there's something to chew on for the next couple of... Welcome back to the Guelo 60 channel. I don't usually get involved with stuff that isn't China related or India related, because India is sort of like the troll of China. And I like to basically show the bad side of India until they learn to show the good side of China. But anyway, I digress. I look at the news, and you know, everything is, well, Putin's on his deathbed. The Ukraine is winning the war. And then the Palestinians, and I don't condone this at all, the Palestinians, not the Palestinians, Hamas. It's they call it a terrorist organization. Well, if you've got people taking over your country, it would be, well, guerrilla warfare, I would imagine. It wouldn't be, but then you're terrorizing people in Israel, and they went in and they killed over 1,000 people, and they took hostages, kidnapped people. That's terrorism in the sense of the dictionary saying you're terrorizing people by your actions for a political view. Okay, well, I think Israel has been doing the same thing to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, just dealing with simply, like, even calorie counts. So they don't have enough food. The water is terrible. They're restricted. Everything coming in and leaving is restricted by the Israelis. So they're being genocided in the eyes of a lot of the people around the world. The Arab communities, for one. I know that Hezbollah, just across the border, is sort of up in arms, and they might get involved with this. I'm not sure yet, but there's some saber rattling going on there. But the idea, I think, behind all of this is that you've got conflict that's been going on in that part of the world for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades, and it goes on and on and on, and it'll never be over, totally be over, because there'll always be those guerrilla warfare people out there, you know, like the IRA in Northern Ireland back in the day. It's just the way people think and how it works. But the idea of terrorizing people, civilians, isn't right. And Israel is doing exactly the same thing to the Palestinians now. But everybody in the West jumps on board and said, the Canadians, oh yes, those terrorists over there, those Hamas terrorists, they're bad. They're fighting for their country, their land, their religion, their people. What's that any different than what the Israelis are doing? Is that any different than what the Ukrainians or the Russians are doing? And that's another thing. As soon as this Israeli thing pops up, and listen to this closely, as soon as this Israeli thing pops up, and yes, I am an expert, so listen to me, or conspiracy theorists, or however you wanna look at it. Now, everything used to be Ukraine-Russia war, Ukraine-Russia war. Ukraine is winning, this and that, and everything's happening. We're giving them billions of dollars, and they're going to, and Zelensky is the king, and all of this and more. And then the Israeli thing happens, and the Israelis are in the back pocket of the Americans. They're buddy-buddy, and they've always been buddy-buddy since World War II. And that's how they've taken so much of the Palestinian land. They've got, you know, all that technology is given to them. But that's another story. But what happened to all of the rhetoric about the Ukraine-Russian war? Police action, whatever. It sort of just fell off the grid. It started back when the Americans started saying, well, you know, they might pull back. We don't want to give as much money. They were sort of waffling on the Ukraine thing. They knew that they can't win. And they just about had to shut their government down because they have no money, and yet they're going to give billions to the Ukrainians and keep this war going. And now, bait and switch, nothing happening here anymore. Now it's happening over here. And what do the Americans do? They send in that carrier strike force, and they're ready to go to war against who? Against the Palestinian people, the Hamas group of people in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, that have been basically genocided by the Israeli people for decades and decades and decades. You know, they don't have what. Well, if anybody else in the world was treated like that by any other country, the leader of that country would automatically be a war criminal. But that's not going to happen in Israel. Why? Well, because it's in the old boys club. The Americans, the Israelis, the Canadians, even the conservatives and the liberals get together on this one, guys. You know, the Australians, to the European Union is looking at it. But then what about those protests that are going on all around the world? And big protests. People, see, now people are starting to see that there's a double standard. If you're not in this group, well, you're automatically a terrorist. If you're fighting for your rights, you're a terrorist. If you don't do what the old boys club wants you to do, now you're a terrorist. People say, don't call them Hamas, don't call them freedom fighters, don't call them this, don't call them that. Call them terrorists, because that's exactly what they are. They do use some terrorist tactics, but you've seen that happening with phosphorus bombs by the Israelis against the Palestinians. Phosphorus bombs. Well, weren't those banned by everybody around the world? But no, the Israelis can use them. And if anybody else used them that wasn't in the old boys club, well, that would be a war crime too. You see where I'm going with this? There's one set of rules for this group of people, and then there's another set of rules for the people that don't have the same religious views, aren't the same color, don't speak the same language, and you go back and you see how China's being ostracized over the last number of decades. Russia, how they've been beaten down, and the USSR went into the toilet, but Russia's starting to come back out, and you know, they're a force to be reckoned with. But you look at a place like Iran. Well, they've got a different belief system there. They're automatically the bad person. They're not the good person. They're the bad person. They always will be, and they always have been, because they don't look at the world the same way as you and I do. Christian or not, if you're white, you got it made, guys. You know, unless you're a Russian, but that's sort of a Slovakian type of setup. But that's for another video too. But you can see where the double standards come in. People around the world are starting to see that. They're starting to understand that what they see on the news isn't reality anymore. This is what they want you to see. They own the media. They own the politicians. They own everything. And we're just pawns in all of this. We're just people to be brainwashed and told what to think. And it seems to be working, because all the media around the Western world has Hamas as terrorists, has the Israelis that are using the same type of tactics against the Palestinians as the good guys. But the Israelis have been taking the Palestinian land since 1947 and basically wiped them out like we did to the American Indians in North America. So where does genocide become okay in a political world? Is it okay if the media says it's okay? If the media labels those people as terrorists, is it okay to genocide their asses? Wipe them off the face of the earth? Is it okay? You tell me, because I don't know. I've been watching the same news as what you've been watching, and I can see through the bullshit. And a lot of people out there can see through the bullshit. And I think it's because they watch channels like this that make them think about how they're being manipulated, how they're not getting the full truth. They're only getting one-sided truth. Journalists used to be able to tell you the news. Now they tell you opinions, and those opinions are paid for by places like the American government and that $500 million that goes to badmouth China. I'm sure they have a fund for the Palestinians too, and the Iranians and the North Koreans and the Russians and whoever else doesn't look at the world the same way as they do, or it's the wrong color, or has the wrong religion. Anyway, that's another video from Gweilao60. If you like this video, as always, I'm just about at 98,000 subscribers, guys, you know, and I've been sitting back in my little office here, studio, office, whatever you want to call it, having a couple of wines, contemplating life in general and what's happening around the world, and I'm disturbed by it. I'm really disturbed by it. I miss sitting on the street corner in mainland China, drinking an ice-cold Li Qian Pijiu, eating barbecued skewers, everything dirt cheap, not a worry in the world, knowing that there's no carrier strike forces going from China to someplace else to stick their nose in other people's business. Knowing that there's no bombs coming our direction because we haven't been in a war since, well, we haven't been in a war. It's just the way it is. We don't occupy other places. The Chinese don't do that. Who does that? Think about it. And that's another video from Gweilao60. Hit the subscribe button. Till next time, peace out. Bye now.